So, I said that I would make this video, and to be honest, I've been trying to get around to making this video for almost a year now, to be honest. Around the same time that I remember I was on the bus on the way home from school, and I was thinking, you know, I'm not a very open person, but I decided that I'm going to be open and honest and not hold anything back for you guys. I mean, you guys is not really my audience, but just listeners, people who listen to me do things. And it's sort of an amazing thing that I have this, at least a small group of people that hear what I have to say. And I love hearing feedback and all that. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people are able to have in their lives. Anyway, like I said, I promised myself that I would be open to my channel and I would let everything out. And I think a lot of it is for myself. You know, I like to go back and listen to how I was a year ago, or 2 years ago, or so, close to 3 years from now. I want to go back and hear, you know, who I was. And I can't really do that if I'm not being completely open. So, I have a story. First thing I should tell you is I was brought up, until about the age of 10 or 11, I was brought up in a Christian church. I was brought up, or I'm sorry, Catholic. I was born into a very extremely hardcore Catholic family. You know, even the school that I went to until I was about 8, you know, it was, you know, go to school, you know, pray to God for 5 minutes in the morning, then have prayer with your teacher, and then, you know, you had a prayer class, and whenever you left a classroom, you had to, you know, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and all that. And then every Friday morning, we were forced to go to the local church as a whole class for 2 hours in the morning, and then of course every Sunday and every Christmas and every Easter and all that. Everything was so, you know, strict. And not only was it religious, but it was very extremely strict. You know, no saying bad words, no talking back. You know, look them in the eye and all this kind of stuff. And I remember I hated it. And it seemed like I was the only observant one. I was the only one. I was the only student that was. How can I say it? That was observant. I was the only one that really thought, you know, why are we doing this? And you know, whenever we would go to church and stuff, it was like there were hold on. Sorry, the hair on my tongue. There was, you know, everybody would be all crying and chanting and reading the songs and listening to the preacher and stuff. And it seemed like not only was I the only student, but I was the only person there that was like not feeling it. You know, I've never cried during church. I've never really felt anything. And it's like, you know, when I remember just as a kid, I would go there, and, you know, 7 or 8 years old, I would sit there and just, you know, it didn't even faze me. And I thought it was just a huge waste of time, and I hated it. I hated going to church, and I hated praying, and I hated all this stuff. And I remember I was being picked up from school one day, and I was being picked up by my babysitter's daughter. Her name was Leah. And her friend were driving. It was a big van. It was my mom's at the time. And they were picking me up from school. Again, I was 7 or 8, and I believe they had to go run an errand. And I was in the back, and they were talking about the CD that they had. And I remember them saying, and they whispered it to each other, or her friend, Leah's friend, whispered it to her, you know, we can't play this with Travis in the car. And I heard him say it, and I overheard it. And Leah said, okay, just wait till he goes to sleep, because I would always take a nap whenever they had an errand to run or something. And I remember I was in the back seat, and I just faced away, and I laid down, and I pretended to be asleep. And they were like, okay, he's asleep. And they put in the track, or they put in the CD, and they went through a couple, and I shared like the first little half second of every song. And you get to the song, I started hearing it. And I remember, and I know this sounds so cheesy and so cliche, but I remember I was like in another world while that song was playing. And it was like, I look back on it, and I have a very vivid memory of my history. and I can tell you my phone number of a house we lived in when I was 3, you know. And but I remember I heard this, and while the whole thing was going, it was like, I remember it was like, it was so euphoric. It was so just out of this world, because it was, the song was The Real Slim Shady, from the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem. And it was the first rap song I had ever heard in my life. And you gotta understand, my father, he always said, I haven't seen my father since I was 6 years old. And what? For what? You have to take my car? Okay. Alright, that's fine. Yep. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, it was like, where was I? Oh, right. My father, I haven't seen my father since I was about 6 years old. He left. And I remember he had a very clever knack for words. Even my mom tells me that that's the biggest way we relate. Is, you know, he used to always make cheesy wordplay jokes, and I can't really give you an example because I don't know any, but my mom, you know, always says, you know, you relate to your father that way so much, you know, just your way with words. If you hang out with me, especially if you're a girl, I always make cheesy, stupid, fucking little clever wordplay jokes. Anyway, we had this thing called the rhyming game, my father and I. And it was, he would say a word, and I had to come up with a word that rhymed with it. And we would just go back and forth until neither of us could come up with a word. I don't know, it sounds stupid, but I loved that. And I'd always loved, like, rhyming words, and just words in general. I remember I was really young. It was before I'd even heard this music, and I pulled up to the, remember we were pulling into the garage, and I was asking my babysitter, who was also very Catholic and stuff. I remember we couldn't say hell, and I was like, well, you can say helmet, why can't you say hell? And they gave me all this bullshit. Anyway, let me get to the point here. I remember being blown away, and my brother, my half-brother Garrett, he's the one that got me into skating and all that a long time ago. This was about 6 months after that. I was telling him about it, and I'd heard he was picking me up from school as well, and we couldn't find anything on the internet. We couldn't find anything on the radio. It was raining and stuff. It was a big storm. But the only thing that would play was that song again, The Real Slim Shady. And I remember listening to it there, and I was like, wow, I really like this music. He could obviously see how, you know, just the effect that it had on me. You know, I've never really danced to music. I've never really sang along with music. But I was really just like just sitting there, just with my eyes closed, just like really feeling this song. And I mean feeling it in every sense of the word. And I remember on my 9th birthday, 8th or 9th birthday, he took me behind the house, behind our house, and he gave me this blue wrapped gift. It was like a little small blue square. And he said, don't let your mom know that I gave this to you. I said, alright. And I opened it, and it was the Marshall Mathers LP. My brother gave me the Marshall Mathers LP. I was 8 or 9 years old. Uncensored, uncut, explicit everything in it. And I remember the effect it had on me. I went into my room late that night. I put it in, made sure my mom was asleep. And I just sat there next to my little CD player thing. And I just sat there for a long time, just taking in everything. And it was like I felt so empowered. I felt so like there's this guy out here who says exactly how I feel, because I hated the whole, you know, Christian or Catholic upbringing and everything's all strict and yes sir, no sir, look him in the eye, pray, you know, all this random bullshit. And he was like the first person that I'd ever heard to, you know, say fuck that, you know, fuck your parents, fuck authority, fuck everything. You know, and he was so vicious, and he had just this power in his voice and this passion. Obviously, I was